All right, it is 3:30, so we will go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us. We've got a great crowd today, so we must have picked a good time for the meeting. So today we have 3 presentations, just again familiarizing us with the resources that if you wish to take a deeper dive into are in our shared Google folder, but I think this is maybe a much easier way for people to get the Cliff Note version of that information that's available. And just a little update, we did have an Advantage Kansas meeting with our larger group this week, and we have a strategic plan template, and so as soon as we get our next Jumpstart meeting set, we'll actually start diving into our part of the strategic plan. So that's really exciting. I feel like we're really beginning to move forward. So I know that all this background information is going to be very useful for us as we start to actually plan the actions that we wish to undertake. So today we have 3 presentations from group members, and thought really about, okay, what is there a good order to put these in? Not really sure if there's an order that makes sense. So if you don't mind, I thought we would start with Matt Lindsay, who is going to report on the Mckinsey findings, which really is the background that all of our work is based upon. So that was really kind of the founding research that said, here's the state of Kansas, and really provides our sense of urgency for needing to move forward. So Matt, we'll let you go ahead and kick us off with the highlights of that information for us.
Great. Thanks, Shelley. So yes, I've got, hopefully you all have before you, you've taken a few minutes to familiarize yourself with the Kansas Framework for Growth Study and the deep dive on the talent and workforce piece from 2019. To summarize quickly, there's really, I think, 2 challenges that are brought forth in this study. One is that Kansas has a talent deficit. So we have a declining working age population, and we have a severe outmigration of post-secondary credentialed individuals, especially of bachelor's degree and beyond residents. So we're exporting people to begin with, and I think the census data that we got yesterday bears that out. But even further, those with post-secondary credentials, and especially those with a bachelor's degree and beyond, are leaving the state. That's one challenge. So we have a talent deficit. The second is we have a talent mismatch. We have challenges around information for job seekers, particularly in rural areas, on finding jobs that match their talent, access to more modern tools for job seeking is more limited. We also have fewer high-skilled jobs for bachelor's and above recipients than we have bachelor's degree holders. So about 24% of the jobs in the state require a bachelor's degree, but we have about 32% of our population with one. That is probably a mutually reinforcing factor in that exodus of bachelor's and above individuals. Is we have fewer jobs for them, they leave, and because they leave, we have fewer jobs for them. There are also significant regional differences. The study notes that this is not a homogeneous set of impacts. That parts of the state, the Wichita and South Central area might see this differently. You can see in some of the maps in the study that essentially the Wichita area, the Johnson County Northeast hub, and then an area around Manhattan, K-State, Fort Riley really is where all the job growth is. Lastly, in the talent mismatch idea, they identify that automation really is a threat for the lower skill employment in the state. That we have a lot of jobs that don't require as much post-secondary, and those individuals are significantly threatened by increases in automation. And they also note that that automation will have, again, a geographically different impact on regions. There would be an uneven impact. It's an interesting piece on, oh boy, what page if you want to find it. 6, excuse me. And you see that the darker counties are expected to have greater displacement from automation. Again, looking pretty strongly at sort of the southwest, south central, southeast parts of the state, with another really highlighted county in Potawatomi County. So that's an interesting finding in here that I think is worth noting, that it's not just the meat packing and meat and livestock industry, or the aviation and manufacturing industry. There are a few other pockets of industry and employment in the state that'll be affected here. There's some policy items in here. One is the study notes that Kansas is kind of bereft of effective tools to address right now the talent deficit piece. That we do have some things we've been trying over the last decade to address the talent mismatch to some effect, but we really don't have a lot of tools in place to really target that talent deficit challenge. For instance, they talk about the Department of Commerce and Workforce Centers activities. SB 155 is helping to make some of this better. But that's what we already talk about, is what do we do about State Bill 155, the Excel and CTE effort. I'm intrigued in this study by a couple of pieces. As you look further in, there's some analysis of ideas borrowing from other states. I'm kind of intrigued by this idea of an effort around welcoming people back to Kansas, an effort to bring back those that we've exported to find Kansas again. Now, it connects for a personal reason, because I was one of those who got a bachelor's degree and left and went to DC and Boston and San Diego, but I was induced to come back, and I don't see myself leaving again. I'm very happy that I made that decision. So there's some personal bias towards that item, but I think there may be something there. There's also some interesting pieces that we could be pulling around upskilling. I think it's labeled as T10 on that last chart. I'm troubled a little bit by how the quick wins here don't quite match up with the talent deficit challenge that the report notes, that the quick wins seem more on easier stuff we can do about talent mismatch. And we don't really have a quick win on the talent deficit piece. And I'm also troubled by, what do we do about the importance and emphasis we have on associate's degree attainment and certificate attainment, and this identification of a mismatch in the jobs that long-term are the right jobs for long-term income. How do we address the stackability and the ongoing professional development of folks, so that an associate's degree or certificate is not the end of the talent development cycle, in order to meet those jobs and avoid the automation impacts that they identify. There's some cool things in here. I looked at the piece that's got on, they've got a note towards Dayton, Ohio's Welcome Dayton effort that I went and researched. There might be some really interesting things there. And I think the Louisiana LED Fast Start study or effort is another one we might want to take a closer look at. That was a quick dive into a very big study in 4 minutes. What questions should I go back to?
Thank you, Matt. That was very informative. It's hard to believe you got all that in 4 minutes. You win a prize of some kind. Any questions or comments that folks have for Matt?
Matt, I haven't read the study in a while. I read it pretty in depth when it first came out. Were there any states that were highlighted as doing reattraction well?
Well, that I didn't see a state. There was the Dayton, Ohio piece was one they noted of doing a good job of bringing folks back. I think it was called the Welcome Dayton effort.
Thanks for that. So I could look into that a little bit more. Thank you.
Des Moines done a great job with that as well over the last several years. I know the folks around here, we've looked at that model.
Matt, I wonder on the McKinsey report talking about that we have less jobs in Kansas that are baccalaureate and above. That data does not agree with the Georgetown data, which would be slightly higher, somewhere between 35 and 40%, as I remember. And I just wonder if you've taken a look into that, or as why those two reports are somewhat different. And so why I think they both say our talent levels in the 30s for baccalaureate, master's, PhDs. The need, Georgetown ranks as much higher in need than that report does.
I am familiar with the Georgetown report, Randy, and I think you're right that there's some discrepancy between the two. I don't think I have an answer as to really why the two are divergent in that way. So I'm not sure I can. I think we might need to look more closely at that and get somebody who maybe knows it even better than I do. I do think that both studies, though, note that we are exporting our bachelor's degree talent. That they're not staying in Kansas, and that is a challenge that we should be attentive to. It's just how much do they match to existing employment or not?
Yeah, I know, I agree with that, and I think when you look at Wichita, it's even stated that if Wichita doesn't grow, it's baccalaureate talent, and when I say baccalaureate, I mean and above talent. That it's never really going to grow in the way that Wichita should grow as a community its size. What I don't want people, until we reconcile that, what I don't want people is to look at that report and say, well, it doesn't matter that we export talent because we've got too much talent anyway, and then say that we only need to go after the certificate 2-year, which I'm a big proponent of, but I don't think. I know that's what that report says, so I'm not dismissing this report. Other reports, though, have not indicated that
That's true.
There.
And to that point, don't forget the increase in the number of people retiring from jobs across the board in Kansas. So while you may say that we've got more than enough bachelor's degrees, or above, no, we don't keep pace with the retirements at all levels of jobs and education.
That's a very good point. Matt, can you elaborate any on the idea, the upskilling? And I think you said that was called T10.
Yeah, they label it in here as T10 as tactic 10. And that's when they point to the Louisiana Fast Start as one that might be a good approach. That a emphasis on in-demand skill training to to upskill those who might be in fields that are declining is a worthy investment to try to bring a short-term approach to addressing some of that mismatch and talent deficit. I think the core, as I looked in, I won't say I'm an expert on the LED Fast Start piece, but the role of employer-based training on that upskilling, the roles for employers was really important. That it wasn't educational entities leading the way, it was business entities.
Matt, did they say anything about how they found people who needed to be upskilled and then get them connected with the trainers?
I didn't see anything in my short perusal of the LED Fast Start website, and this doesn't. Their McKinsey report doesn't speak to that.
Matt, it didn't reference workforce AID in relation to that, did it? Because
no, it did not. No, it did
sort
not.
of like that model.
Yeah.
I was going to say it sounds like it would be right in line with workforce AID.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's something I can pass along to that work group to make sure that they've looked at that LED fast start study. I think they have, but make sure. All right, well, thank you, Matt. We appreciate you taking the time to dive into that. And so what I would like next to do, Ann Ma was going to share a bit of the highlights. The National Governors Association gave a presentation to us, and by us, I mean Advantage Kansas, a few months ago, and wanted just to get that information out to everyone else. And after we do that, I think that would be a good segue into Jean Clifford's information, who also spent some time actually meeting with the NGA group that came to do some work with the State Department of Education on work-based learning. And Dr. Watson may also wish to kind of chime in on that, just to kind of make that connection with how that group is helping us. So, Ann.
Thank you, Shelley. Well, on May 17th, as Shelley said, Amanda Winters and Rachel Stevens made a presentation to the Advantage Kansas Coordinating Council on workforce and education alignment. So my job today is to summarize that information they provided and hopefully entice you to dig deeper into their work. And you can find, of course, that presentation in our resource library. Well, NGA has been around, if you're not familiar, for more than a century, and it represents the governors of 55 states, territories, and commonwealths. It's a nonpartisan organization that identifies priority issues of public policy and governance. Their research arm, the Center for Best Practices, helps develop and implement solutions to public policy challenges, and that's why they were with us, to give us some ideas on how to meet the goals of aligning our workforce and education in Kansas. As it turns out, many other states are working on this same issue, and some are way ahead of us. They noted that Kansas has a good state agency coordination effort going on with the Board of Regents, the Department of Commerce, our workforce boards, and K-12 work-based learning. They noted that our connection points across sectors included work-based learning continuum, a good employer engagement, credential attainment, labor market analysis, and funding, the things that we're all kind of working on. They presented ideas that other states have put into place that might be of use to us in our efforts, and I won't cover them all, but I wanted to note a few that I thought had particular relevance for Kansas. Indiana's Next Level project focuses on rapid recovery from the COVID pandemic by helping obtain training and career counseling and increasing access to quality jobs. They also help with emergency aid, childcare, and food assistance, things that people need so they can go to work. They're using CARES funding to do this and focus on the areas they have identified as high demand for training programs. Those areas will sound familiar. They're advanced manufacturing, building and construction, health and life sciences, IT and business services, and transportation and logistics. They use online surveys to connect potential employees with training providers. There's free statewide training for those high demand, high wage jobs. Arizona has Reskilling and Recovery Network, and it focuses on getting workers the skills they need in an economy reshaped by the pandemic. They created a collaboration between community colleges, workforce development, and industry leaders, and also work with NGA and the Lumina and Siemens Foundations. They also network with other states in this effort, and the framework is one I think we might consider. The NGA representatives also had some information about apprenticeship programs. For example, CareerWise Colorado is a youth apprenticeship program where students graduate high school on time, earn a nationally recognized industry certification, and the opportunity for debt-free college credit. Additionally, apprentices enter the workforce either after they've completed a higher ed degree or immediately following their apprenticeship with a professional network and experience in a high-pay, high-demand field. The Colorado program, I noted, was modeled after a Swiss program. In Switzerland, they have 230 approved apprenticeship occupations, and 40% of all companies in the country participate in that program. In that environment, 70% of Swiss students choose apprenticeships, and 30% of them stay with their training company or return after college. In fact, they noted many of the world's largest companies are run by CEOs that started out as apprentices, so they were really pressing that program. Oklahoma, as you can imagine, is facing some of the same issues Kansas is in regards to gaps between skills obtained and skills needed. Their Launch Oklahoma project hopes to close those gaps. They also need about, as we do from the Georgetown report, 70% of workers to have post-secondary training, and they're sitting in the 40% range now, not far from us. They are working on awareness, access to training, better high school preparation, and engaging employers. They have divided their state into 7 economic regions, and they not only have state goals, but they have region-wide goals. And they've been at this since 2017, so I'd be interested in getting more information about what worked and what did not. NGA suggested that we develop our work-based learning continuum from K-12 through registered apprenticeships more strongly. They have also done a lot of work in defining, aligning, measuring, and funding credentials in states, along with how we get quality data. They also noted there are some models and partnerships already existing that we might tap into, like the IBM Skills Build, particularly for IT, for adult education, something like Arizona's AI training or Louisiana's Reboot Your Career program that's reduced tuition and fees and emphasizes short-term training to get more people interested in it. NGA also has a number of resources on work-based learning, quality non-degree credentials, how to make your state workforce board more effective, and more. To that end, our Talent Ready team is actually having the NGA work with us on some ideas for upskilling and credentialing, and they're going to be meeting with us next week. So we're hoping to learn more about what ideas we can get from them to get a jump start on, if you will, a jump start on Talent Ready. So anyway, I'd encourage all the Jumpstart and the Talent Ready team members to take a look at this NGA presentation. It's a lot of links. It was a PowerPoint presentation with a lot of links. You can jump to any of those ideas that you think sound interesting. And if you want to reach out to Amanda or Rachel, they're amazing. I wrote to Amanda and told her we had some questions about credentials in particular. Tell me more about NC3. What do you know? Are those quality credentials? Are they something we should be paying more attention to? And in 3 days, they had a paper back to me, not only with an assessment of that, but, a number of resources. And one was a 20-page document. I'm a paper and pencil girl, so I printed it out. But it has a ton of ideas about ways we can get our upskilling going. So NGA is just, I think, going to be a real helpful resource to us. That, like I said, there are other states way ahead of us. So I think we can learn something from what has worked there in those states and what hasn't to really get us going. And that's the long and short of it.
And thank you for those highlights. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Ann? All right, thank you. Just as a kind of a segue from that into our next presentation, as I said, the State Department of Education is doing some work with National Governors Association on their work-based learning. So I didn't know if anyone there, Ann or Jean, I know actually sat in on a meeting, or Dr. Watson, if you are at liberty to comment any on how that work is going. I know you met with them somewhat recently. If there's anything of noteworthiness to share.
Well, I would defer to Stacy or Jean on that if they want to comment.
Yeah, they were very supportive. I think we got a little bit idea of the planning taken care of for our initiative this year. Chastity Troxel attended for commerce. I would have liked to have had a little bit more involvement from maybe Trent or Mike Bean to really support us in defining the intermediary position through the workforce development centers. I just think there's a real opportunity to connect to some of the structure that exists through EcoDevo. So that would be one thing that I've got a call with Deb Schneider next week. And we're going to talk about Region 1 a little bit because they're pretty spread out. And we've got a lot of schools that really want to come on and develop those internships. And so scaling it is going to be an issue if we're hampered by, one formal intermediary. Getting the informal and community-based intermediaries up to speed will be a big deal for us. And Jean, go ahead. I kind of jumped in right on top of you.
No, I would agree. I thought it was a really interesting meeting, and I'd like to be able to continue that kind of discussion and probably get in a little deeper with that and more specific to what we need to do in Kansas.
And we have another work-based learning training. It'll be a day-and-a-half training we'll perform in Wichita, October 19th and 20th, that'll support work-based learning coordinators in high schools and connecting with the intermediaries and all of the policies. So this will be the third time that we've done that.
This is Chastity. I just want to add that we did just recently receive a grant that we applied for the state of Kansas. And I know I briefly talked about it on our last meeting, but I do want everyone to know that it is on our registered apprenticeship website, the RFP that is out right now for proposals. And it does have a due date of September 17th.
Yeah, and I think the structure is kind of changing for commerce. And I even saw Keith Long's hiring a new person in Wichita for their work-based learning intermediary to augment what Alex Kofit is doing. And so I think it's growing pretty quickly.
Stacy, this is Ann. I was thinking that at the end of the day, with that meeting with NGA, we were supposed to have a strategic plan worked out. Did that happen, or how far did you guys get?
I'll follow up with Natalie and see if she's got the notes pulled together. It may not have felt like a strategic plan, but it's probably a clearer direction than we've had in the past. We've got some things in play with KBOR on program alignment. We had a curriculum review committee that met today. And so even looking at like computer support specialists and better aligning our program with our updated computer science standards is particularly promising. And that's moving ahead. So we'll have more of those program reviews to more clearly articulate the programs throughout this year.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you everyone who shared. I think that's just important work for us to all be informed about as we move forward. And last but not least, Jean Clifford took a look at the Learning 2025 report and will share some of that information with us. Jean.
Thank you. This is a really interesting report from a number of standpoints. It's the School Superintendents Association publication called A Report from the Learning 2025 National Commission on Student-Centered, Equity-Focused Education. It's an April 8th, 2021 publication, so it's quite recent. And it's entitled An American Imperative, A New Vision of Public Schools. This is not specifically Kansas focused or even Midwest focused. It's a generalized call for nationwide holistic redesign of the public school system, ambitiously by 2025. That is their goal. They indicate that the forcing function for this was the pandemic, which exposed the severity of system inequities, and it presented an opportunity to reshape schools to meet all whole learner needs and to optimize their achievement. This commission believes that the time for action is now, and that in view of the fact that many school districts have adapted to a hybrid school model in an effort to recoup pandemic-induced learning loss, that this would be considerations that should be taken in designing those school systems. They talk about 3 core components and the corresponding essential areas of redesign of schools, and those are culture, social, emotional, cognitive growth, and resources. In terms of culture, they want schools to be redesigned so that they are whole learner focused. So the entire system would be focused on the learner, their social, emotional, cognitive, mental health, and trauma-based needs, and that schools would be a safe haven for learners. They want no learner to be marginalized. This would apply to all learners. And they indicate that our culture should be where all children, families, and staff are embraced and valued equally, and that schools should be a pillar or a model for society in this. We should have systemic equity. They indicate that schools should be future driven. We're teaching outdated skills and preparing learners for our past, which is kind of something we're working on now. And that we need to redesign schools and re-engineer learning through a future lens, so that the world our learners will navigate as adults will be transformed through what they're going to be dealing with: technological advancements, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and basically all the technology that will be changing. And I think this is kind of pertinent to what we are looking at right now. They want to create new and eliminate old post-secondary pathways, which is another thing that we're looking at, the ones that are really not indicating an economic success for Kansas, and adapt the curriculum to remain relevant to learners' futures as opposed to preparing them for past positions. The second component, social, emotional, and cognitive growth, they're looking at a cognitive growth model. They want to re-engineer all teaching and learning to be reoriented around the individual learner. And they want each learner to be very involved in their own education, to express their needs and preferences, their interests and passions, so that educators can adapt instruction to them. They indicate that when teachers instruct and assess learners on a growth continuum model, utilizing data collection, analysis, planning, learning, and evidence of learning work, that this constant feedback loop will bring about more precision and more personalized instruction for learners. And it will engage both the learners and their parents and caregivers in the learners' growth and their learning plans. They indicate also that educators should be liberated to use grade and age-based or alternative groupings as appropriate for learning. So that kind of is also something that we're looking at in terms of being more flexible on those things as opposed to the traditional model. And then in terms of resources, they recommend that communities develop a panel of school associations, state and federal leaders to develop action plans to create this learner-centered, equity-focused education. And they see some areas as the most critically in need, learning accelerators, which they generally discuss as technology and the multiplier effect of technology, so that learners can learn everywhere. and two essential parts of that are to ensure all learners have access to quality technology tools, and also to engage policymakers to designate internet broadband as a public utility. And we know the importance of both of those things. They recommend that community resources be aligned to support this. And that is kind of what Advantage Kansas, I think, is focusing on, trying to involve communities and businesses in this, and to utilize schools as an invaluable resource to the community at large. So getting other organizations and businesses in our schools as part of our schools. They also would like to see high quality early learning for all children, and we have focused quite a bit on early learning and see it as essential to continuing that K-12 journey, that those first early learning experiences be valuable. Another one that they have under the resources to create a diverse educator pipeline, which I think is really an important aspect. It really isn't something that is necessarily part of Advantage Kansas, but I think it would be an learning accelerator to try to encourage educators and staff who are representative of the learners, families, and communities in which they support, and to increase the status of being an educator. We know that that's been a constant problem. Partner with high schools and universities to try to get pipelines into becoming a certified educator. And they do that through a couple of ways. They encourage student loans, which are for teacher education preparation. They use the example of a GI Bill for teaching, and then also to forgive student loans of educators who are trying to become accredited as a principal or administrator, sort of a GI Bill for principals. So I think that those are some ideas that would be really helpful to try to get more administrators and educators that are diverse in our schools. They are launching this vision, and they are doing two things to try to encourage districts and states to begin this work. And one, they're creating portraits of learners, educators, educational leaders, and systems, so people, educators, and the community members can visualize how this is going to be accomplished. So they're looking at individuals who really represent these efforts. And they're also creating demonstration sites to model what they would like to see in districts and schools nationwide. And they've categorized those in three ways. They have lighthouse sites, which already exemplify the type of situation they would like to see, that people could visit or model their efforts on. They have aspiring sites, which have some initiatives underway, and they have emerging sites, which are sites that are early in their practice. This is very much like what we are doing with redesign. So I think, having models helps people understand how this could be accomplished in their own district. One of the key points that you had indicated what results were obtained. There really aren't results yet, because it is a plan that hopefully they're hoping to come to fruition in 2025. So there aren't really results yet. It's still in the planning stage. what actions, if any, we might wish to emulate in Kansas. I think that a lot of what this report does is reinforce some of the things that we are already doing in Kansas with redesign and IPS. And it does give us some ideas of things we might consider doing that would also enhance that. What cautions or wondering surface? I think the involvement of families, communities, and businesses is really right up our alley, what we're trying to accomplish. And I really like some of the approaches that they've discussed in there. And additional resources to be explored. Having the technology and the broadband as a utility, I don't know that that's coming anytime real soon, but I would like to see that that be accomplished really nationwide, and certainly in Kansas. We could also determine for Advantage Kansas lighthouse sites, and I like the way Anne, I think, talked about one of the states had regional looks, but regional divisions of their sites, so that we could have maybe model sites or lighthouse sites in each of our areas, because they are so different. And I think the use of sites for demonstration and the stratification of those sites from emerging, aspiring, and then the actual full-on sites was really kind of useful, because it kept people, it gave them a picture of how they might model this and move forward. There are 9 appendices to each of these things that go into a lot more detail about these things. But and there is a 1-page executive summary of the report for those who are interested. But I really do think there's a lot to be said for what we've done in Kansas in terms of redesign and individual plans of study. And we're very student and staff, family, and community focused with the early childhood focus that we've had. I think there's an awful lot of things that we can tick off that we are working on. So I thought it was a really interesting report and very helpful to confirm some of the things that we have done towards these efforts. So that was the end of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. And I think it's really interesting that the timeline that they've laid out, this vision to get to 2025, is very similar, of course, to our Advantage Kansas 5-year timeline. It doesn't exactly line up, but pretty darn close. And needless to say, the skills gap that we are seeing with underrepresented groups in our state, that the equity piece of this 2025 report definitely very useful and something for us to keep in mind as we work here in the Jumpstart work group with K-12. How do we make sure that the things that we're doing as they connect to post-secondary and beyond, how are we lifting up those underrepresented groups? So I think there were some really good ideas in that for us to keep in mind. Other questions, comments that anyone has for Jean about the information? Jean, thank you very much for diving into that for us. And just to wrap up, I'm so excited that we have, Jean has something. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I really think they should have given Kansas credit, because a lot of these things, are really things that the department has developed and we've worked on for a number of years already. So it should have a footnote there, but I didn't see one.
Yes, often do great things and don't get the credit for it, but it was affirming, I would think, for everyone, especially there at KSDE, to see that we're making some strides in the right direction. So again, thank you for sharing. Really happy to see so many people of our group on today. We have 18 participants, so that's not all of us, but definitely a great number. This was our last meeting that we have scheduled. Obviously, we need to get some future dates on the calendar, and at our next meeting, we really will begin diving into building our strategic plan. At the AKCC meeting earlier this week, we put just some ideas on paper for each of the work groups, then, you know, to go back to you and say, okay, this is what AKCC put together. Now you take it and, you know, and continue to really flesh that out and refine it. So that's what we'll be doing at our next few meetings. So with that, I wanted to put some dates out and see how they might work for people. So again, really pleased to see so many people on here who can give input. We've had a lot of our meetings either on a Monday or a Wednesday. You know, do we have any preferences moving forward? You know, I've looked at, gosh, we could do the second Monday. I think that 10 to 11:30 time slot seemed to work pretty well for people either on a Monday or a Wednesday. If that still works, if we did it the second Monday, it would kind of stack our meeting up against the Advantage Kansas for the people that are on that. I don't know if that would be a good thing or a bad thing, or certainly we could look at some other Monday or perhaps a Wednesday. So I'm really open to suggestions and would love to hear from all of you what might be convenient, but I'd really like to get a September, October, and a November meeting put on our calendars, because I know we're all very busy people and time fills up.
Shelley, just speaking for myself, with school starting, Mondays are PSU's leadership meetings in the mornings at that same time. Just so some of those I can make and some of those I may have to come in at the end.
Wednesdays, as I said, that's another day that looking back at our calendar, I see we've had some meetings on Wednesdays. If that works
Probably
better for
avoid
people.
the week of the board K-board meetings.
Yes, obviously that won't work for me, so I won't put those on there. So normally that would be the third Wednesday.
Those Wednesdays are okay here.
Wednesday mornings would work well for me.
Yeah, generally I can make just about anything work, but as long as I have enough advance notice. No one cares about my time as much.
I bet someone cares, Patrick. What if we did, I mean, what would the second Wednesday look like? That would be the 8th of September, the 13th of October, the 10th of November. Would those be workable dates for a lot of people if we did that 10 o'clock to 11:30 time slot?
It's not going to work with the state board other than September when we have the joint meeting with KBOR. Those are state board meeting dates.
Can you have someone just send out a poll that lists all of the available ones, and we'll put the ones we're free for, and then you can pick
I
which.
could do that. Yeah, Tyranny can put something like that together for us. So Wednesdays kind of work, or do you want me to open it up and do other days of the week? What's your preference? Or avoid Wednesdays? I mean, there's nothing special about Wednesdays or Mondays or.
Wednesdays might be okay. Just stay off the second one when the board meets.
The second and third Wednesdays. So maybe try the first and the fourth Wednesdays and see if that is workable. And if we went with Mondays, Howard, you said every Monday you have administrative meetings at Pitt State.
We do. If you start at 10 or 10, if you start at 10, I can probably catch part of the meetings. It actually depends on the Monday sometimes, just like many of them. Typically it's our President's Council meeting where we deal with university-wide issues.
Okay. Well, I will get Tierney Kurtdahl, who is now serving as our administrative assistant support. I'll get her to send out a one of those doodle poll things and see what we can find that works for people. So watch for that coming early next week, and please respond to it in a timely fashion, and then we can get some dates picked. Everyone have a fabulous weekend. Those of you who are involved with school of any kind, whether it be post-secondary or K-12, I know things are kicking off now, so wishing all of you a safe and uneventful start to the school year, unless the events are something really positive. So take care, everyone.
Thanks, Shelley.
Bye, everybody.